Out of all the upcoming indie animated pilots in 2025, the Gaslight District was one of my most anticipated. And after 2 years, the pilot has finally dropped. So, did it live up to my expectations? Not really. This first episode isn't bad, far from it actually, but it pains me to say this pilot did not live up to my expectations. Before I get into why I was a little let down by this pilot, let me go over what this pilot does well. Because believe me, it does a lot well. First off, the animation looks incredible. I absolutely love the aesthetic this show is going for. It looks straight out of a Tim Burton or a Laika movie. Everything from the character animation to the action to the lighting to the little touches of 2D animation, it just looks great. And I love some of the direction in some of these action scenes. My favorite shot is probably this one. Everything from the slow-mo to the angel's hand coming in just looks phenomenal. This show is a visual masterpiece from beginning to end, and it's probably the most impressive thing Glitch has done from a visual standpoint, with the Murder Drones finale coming pretty close. The animation is easily the best aspect of this pilot. The soundtrack for this pilot is also great. So many memorable tracks that really fit the vibe of this world. The voice cast is all around great, with Jason Momoa as Ken specifically giving an outstanding vocal performance. The comedy is overall pretty well balanced and solid, in particular the visual gags are great. The world building is incredibly intriguing and clearly has a lot of effort put into it, and I can't wait for it to be explored in future episodes. So yeah, this pilot has a lot going for it, but it's brought down by its two massive issues: the characters and most of all, the pacing. So let's start with the characters. The biggest problem with the characters is we don't really get to see a lot of character interactions between them outside of Mel and Ken. So to sum up the basic stuff, spoilers ahead, the world ended a while ago and now the island is full of demons that can't really die. They live on an island that seems to be a version of Dante's Inferno, and these things called Rawlings worship a prophecy called the Black Hand, where a human will someday come and destroy their world. As it turns out, our main character Mel is actually a human, and the only one who knows is her adoptive father Ken. And whenever someone finds out the truth about her through her black blood, they track them down to get rid of them by sending them to the bottom of the sea to rot since they can't drown. Mel wants to prove herself to be a member of the Smiling Dead, while Ken wants her to keep low and help with their family restaurant. While I find Mel to be an interesting character, it's unclear if the show is setting up her wanting to be a part of the Smiling Dead, since that seems to be her motivation for most of the episode, until the ending, where during Ken's big speech regarding how vile humans are, Mel's frightened and uncomfortable facial expressions could potentially tease an arc of her standing up for herself and not being afraid of hiding that she's a human. But Mel being a human in general is pretty underwhelming, since the prophecy that the angel warns her about doesn't tell us what exactly she's supposed to do and how it will make the world worse, especially since the world is already in ruins, so why should we care when it seems to be rotting with a bunch of seemingly awful people? The punishments they do show, like sending people to rot underwater forever and being trapped in ice snow, shows how twisted this world has become, and it makes you ask, what would Mel do when she takes the prophecy? As for Ken, he's probably the most interesting character in the show. It seems he has two split personalities, of one being more caring and soft, while the other is completely insane and hot-headed. My problem with him is his character is incredibly confusing at some points. We don't really know why he wants people gone if they find out about Mel, and the lengths that he goes to make sure no one finds out makes it pretty hard to root for him, since it's unclear if he's doing this for the greater good or for completely selfish reasons. The scene with him killing Freckle from Lackadaisy felt completely out of nowhere, and if you want to understand it, you'd really have to pay attention that Ken had a picture of him with Mel as a baby. And unless there's a good payoff for it in a future episode, I don't like it when shows do that, and it's worse with the fact that this is the first episode. Before I get more into that, let's talk about the other two characters, Mud and Breadhead. Breadhead is a nothing character. He seems to be the muscle of the group, but the only thing I really like about his character is his design. because outside of the first 5 minutes, he does basically nothing for the entire pilot. I'm also disappointed at the lack of interactions between Mel and Breadhead since they're siblings. They have 2 interactions in the entire pilot, and both of them last like 5 seconds. As for Mud, he seems to be the comic relief of the group. If we're talking these characters by entertainment value, Mud is probably my favorite out of the main 4. He steals every scene, and the best jokes come from him, and I really like his design and voice. It reminds me a lot of Murdoch from Gorillaz. I dig it. He does a lot more than Breadhead, but he doesn't have enough screen time or interactions with the other characters to leave a super big impression that makes him a character that I want to see more of. If he's just there to be the comedic relief, I'm fine with that, but I would have preferred more interactions with the other characters. And the fact that these 2 are completely okay with getting rid of the people that find out about Mel's secret despite not knowing themselves makes it hard to root for them because again, it just makes them come off as horrible but not in an endearing way like some other shows. So looking at a pilot where there's only 4 leads and only 2 of them really get stuff to do, that's not good character utilization, especially if said characters barely interact and seem incredibly unsympathetic. But the characters still aren't this pilot's biggest issue. It's the pacing. Despite being a 26-minute pilot, a runtime that can allow a solid runtime to properly introduce the characters and what the main story is going to be, this pilot moves at such a fast pace with so many things happening at once, it becomes incredibly hard to follow and feels like way too much. This pilot starts with the first 2 to 3 minutes being nothing but exposition from a narrator, and it doesn't feel like the start to a show. It feels like I'm watching a damn trailer, and it completely goes against one of the most important rules of storytelling. Show, don't tell. It was so hard for me to follow anything that was happening in this pilot that I had to rewatch it like 3 times to properly understand what was going on, and that is not how a show should begin. While I didn't want to compare these shows since they're very different, let's take a quick look at the Murder Drones pilot and the Amazing Digital Circus pilot. Those pilots are the same lengths as the Gaslight District, being 26 minutes, and those pilots are way better balanced with how they're paced. While I have issues with how Digital Circus's pilot is paced in the second half, I really like how they paced the first half with establishing the world with Kane showing Pomni around the circus, since it's appropriate to that show's world and us learning the world with Pomni, and it makes it so it doesn't feel so overstuffed, along with the beginning actually giving an introduction to all the main characters and having them actually interact with each other throughout the pilot. And with Murder Drones, yes, the pilot begins with exposition, but instead of a narrator, it comes from our main protagonist, Uzi, and it being a presentation in her classroom makes sense so it doesn't feel jarring. It serves a purpose and it properly introduces us to the history of the worker drones in a good way. With Gaslight, it feels completely unclear what the show is really going to be about. This pilot acts more like it's the second episode or the season finale instead of being the very first episode. It just throws way too much stuff at you. It starts with exposition, then action, then more action, then lore, then action and action and action and action, and then it's over. It doesn't set the time to show out the dynamic of all the characters and spends way too much time setting up stuff that could happen in future episodes. If this show wants to be plot focused, it can be that, but it can't only be plot focused and not take the time for us to really get to know the characters. Overall, the Gaslight District has a lot of potential, and I'm definitely interested in seeing future episodes. I think if this show takes the time to just slow down and help us understand more about these characters, it can truly be something great. But for now, I'm a bit ambivalent towards it. So I'm going to give the pilot for the Gaslight District a 6 out of 10. And if I see Michael Kovac in one more indie show, I'm going to lose my mind.